name's Dave DeWalt, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm multi-time CEO, CEO of Documentum, McAfee, FireEye. I've been on 40 plus boards, chairman of many companies, and I just have so much fun hosting these fireside chats. We call them NightVision. And today I got a special guest as well. Before I do that, if you don't know NightDragon, we are an investment and advisory firm, and we focus in on the cyber safety, security, and privacy market. As Ashan knows, we have to have good acronyms for everything. CSSP is NightDragon's focus. We focus on the $400 billion market of cyber and national security. We've launched a couple of funds. We've been building our company out, now 75 plus people. So fun this time around for me to found a company and build it from scratch up into something interesting. And it's now a fun job where I get to tell CEOs what to do or give them advice on things to do versus the other way around for 20 years being a CEO. So NightDragon's a fun platform, investment advisory. Today I have such a great guest. And I was super excited that, Ashan, you had accepted coming on here with me. For those who don't know, Proofpoint's new CEO coming up on his first year anniversary, and we'll have some fun with that in a second, but Ashan Willy has been an amazing rock star, in my opinion, in the world of high tech and now the world of cybersecurity as well. Ashan has many years of experience. Immigrated to Canada, and I'll let him tell his journey in a second, but started as a network engineer at Bell, and then ultimately spent 15 plus years at Cisco through the eyes of WebEx and then Cisco, an amazing career at Cisco, very technical skill set Ashan has as well. And then I got a chance to work with him at Polycom, which I was really excited with. I was chairman of Polycom for a number of years and really got a chance to learn the collaboration world. And I'll tell the story of meeting Ashan in a minute, but he also then spent 6 years now at Proofpoint and the last 1 year as CEO. Ashan Willy, thank you so much for joining our NightVision event. Where are you coming in from and dialing in from today?
Yeah, Dave, first off, thanks very much for having me. So I'm thrilled to be here. I know this is, you cannot have picked a cooler company name, right, as NightDragon. But I'm coming in from Sunnyvale for those for the audience that's in Northern California, sort of the heart of Silicon Valley. Where it's a little rainy, a little chilly. It's not the California that you've seen, but it is. But I'm coming from beautiful Sunnyvale.
Oh, thank you, Ashan, so much. So glad to have you here. Tell a little bit of your journey. I mean, I love it. I'm an immigrant from, I say, Pennsylvania. I grew up in the coal regions and the steel mill areas, blue collar Pennsylvania. I went to the University of Delaware. I studied electrical engineering like you did. I drove my car across the country with no job, no money, and landed in Silicon Valley, and it was like the land of opportunity. And here I am 30 years later, just so thankful for that. Tell your story a little bit as well, if you would.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Appreciate the opportunity. So, so first off, I am Canadian, and as they say, the old adage, Dave, which I think is that behind every successful American company are some damn good Canadians. And so I'm Canadian, but my journey started a little before that. I was actually born in a small island called Sri Lanka, which is, and I left there early on because there was a civil war that started there, as many of you know, your audience I'm sure knows, and that ended in 2010. But we left, and I grew up in Africa, actually. So Central Africa, a place called Zambia, which is probably famous for safaris and Victoria Falls, but at the time, it was famous for copper. During the PC revolution, of course, you need a lot of copper, right? And so it had the second largest copper mines behind Chile at the time. And so they needed some expats to work there. And so my family moved over there. Now it's come back. The reason I bring that up is it's come back in style with all these electric vehicles, right? You need copper, you need the byproduct of that with nickel and all of that. And so that's come back in style. But then I left there and I moved to Canada, and like you, I did electrical engineering in my undergrad. And after that, I started my journey in a couple of companies, a couple of startups, but then went probably the more interesting piece was I went to a portion of Bell Canada at the time, and you think, oh, Bell Canada, big telco. There's a portion called Bell Sigma, and we were building the backbone of the internet at the time. This was early 90s for Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the internet backbone was run by universities, right? So University of Toronto ran the internet backbone. I mean, if you can think about that, the entire internet backbone of Canada was run by University of Toronto. It then, Bell Canada took it over and sort of commercialized that and made sure that it was important, because turns out this internet thing was kind of important. And so we did that. And so that was that part of the journey where I got pretty technical and got into that and did a whole bunch of development stuff. And then I moved over to Cisco and started out in Southern California and did a variety of different roles. Dave, over 15 years, you do just a ton of different things, everything from go-to-market to sales to product. I did all of that. I think perhaps one piece is, at the time, we bought WebEx, and I moved over to run WebEx with a few other folks. The key piece there is, at the time, it was the second largest enterprise SaaS company behind Salesforce back in 2008, right? And that was sort of the advent of, here's a new model in terms of recurring revenue. Here's how you treat customers in that model, right? Here's how all of that. So I got my SaaS chops there, and then moved, as you had mentioned, to Polycom, and it's been 6 wonderful years at Proofpoint.
Amazing. Sri Lanka to Zambia to Canada to Southern California. And I saw you went to Pepperdine University, which is a horrible place to probably go to school, right on the cliffs of Southern California. You learned to surf while you were there too?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. There were better surfers. I stayed away from the surf. I spent a few hours on the tennis court, but not so much.
So you and I had a chance to meet, and I'm curious first, is it true, like there's 2 things you can never leave, your mama and your hockey team? Is that true? Do you have a hockey team in Canada there?
Yeah, the Maple Leafs are doing pretty well now. They're back in style.
I'll test you on some Maple Leaf knowledge later, so you better Google quickly. But I remember meeting you, and I wanted to set the stage for this because I met you in Canada, I met you in Vancouver, and you had just started at Polycom. I was the chairman of Polycom, and I remember vividly seeing you enter the stage. And for a guy who loves stages, and those who know me, I just love people, and I love interacting with people and keynotes. And I remember you going on the stage, and I think at the time you were running all the SEs, or sales engineers, system engineering for Polycom. And I was like, wow, this guy is so technical. He's so articulate. He's so charismatic. And I remember at the time going, he needs to be a CEO. And here we are a few years later talking about you being a CEO. And I always thought the great juxtaposition of technical skills, learning how to portray technical details of a product to customers, teach salespeople how to do it, be technical and understand both sales culture and technical, is a perfect combination to become a CEO. And how's it going for you now, 1 year later as a CEO? Like, how's it feel?
Yeah, look, it's it was. I think you shake the new, as you shake the new moniker out in the first 3 months, right? I mean, it is you've got to sort of jump into it. I was fortunate, as you said, Dave. I was fortunate to understand the bones of the company, and the bones of the company here at Proofpoint. You have different types of company. I've been through the valley, like you have. Is that you have companies that are started by R&D, you have companies that are started by sales. I thought Proofpoint really had a customer culture, and so when I came in, I led not only the go-to-market pieces, but I also had customer success, which is a big deal, I think, and it's something that, as a discipline, is good for a vendor to have. And it all stems from making sure that your customers are fully utilizing what they have from you, right? And so that I think that really helped. And then I ran product, right? I mean, I ran product for a few years, which gave me a good sort of basis for becoming CEO. And quite honestly, the CEO at the time, Gary Steele, who's now at Splunk, and did a wonderful job starting the company up, moving it 20 years on. Just he certainly grew me to a big deal, to a big degree, to take this job. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
So, okay. So I've been looking at social media preparing for your interview with me. And I said, okay, somebody's beating me at social media. So those who follow me too, you know, I'm pretty active on social media. I just love it to communicate. I see you've been doing a lot. You've been traveling all over the world, Ashan, and I saw, you know, your trips to, you know, Asia. I saw you were in Israel. Seems like you're doing a 360 on the company a bit. You know, I saw you do a sales kickoff. I think it was in Orlando with the whole team. You did an employee kickoff. Talk a little bit about your first 100 days, your first year here. What were you trying to accomplish? And, you know, we'll segue a little into what you see going forward, but what were you trying to do? And I'm curious of your cultural side that you're trying to bring to Proofpoint too.
Yeah, so I think I think to me the first 100 days are critical, right? And so how do you establish a culture? How do you understand the culture? And one of the things I always find in any job, and I learned this early on, Dave, which is that you could be working alongside somebody in a different function for 5 years, 10 years, but until you walk in that person's shoes, you don't quite understand what that is. So it was really important for me to understand, even though I thought I knew, I understand every function of the company, what we're doing, and what value we can bring and unlock. So that part was important. I spent a lot of time with customers. I think in the first 90 days, I must have seen close to 200 plus CISOs, right? And it was just it was wonderful because I wanted to know what they thought of us, where we could be better, where our unique value proposition is. So I spent a lot of time with CISOs, and then can't help it, I spent some time with R&D because I felt there's some opportunity for us to really define where I think this industry is going, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And so I spent a lot of time with that, and it's just fascinating, right? When you talk to people and understand their point of view, you just sometimes don't know what you don't know, right? And the first 100 days really cemented that for me.
The part I was impressed with was seeing you amongst the people the way you were, communicating, traveling, communications. I always say as a CEO, and I watched that, you're doing town halls, you're doing employee kickoffs, you're doing sales kickoffs, you're doing president's clubs, you're traveling around the world. Although I'm going to tease you for a rookie CEO move. One of your posts was in Sydney, and then the next post was in Tokyo. And I'm going to remind you, that's not a short distance between Sydney and Tokyo. So usually people go to the southern side or the northern side. So maybe it was just your hard work that got you all the way up there.
Yeah, no, I know. That was a rookie move. That was not just a rookie CEO move. That's just a rookie travel move. And so, but look, I want to, just because a few folks in both Sydney and Tokyo will be watching this, and so I'll tell you, it was wonderful. It was well worth it. I will tell you, the 3 red eyes were not recommended. Not recommended.
I've done a few of those over the years, to say the least, thousands probably. I remember I'd always be traveling around the world, but I always wanted to get back to see my kids for the weekend or whatever they were doing. And I'd travel from India to San Francisco, and all of a sudden I'd be at a soccer game. So you do what you got to do for work-life balance for sure. Ashan, you and I have some interesting crossroads. You've now acquired 2 of NightDragon's companies. Observe It, which is a company I was chair of as well, Boston-based company with some pretty strong Israeli development as well. Then you acquired Elusive Networks recently as well, which has another very strong Israeli. Talk a little bit about, if you would, and I was really attracted to your slogan of protect people, defend data. Talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with Proofpoint, acquisitions, development, strategy, things like that.
Yeah, no, look, we really feel we're on the right track here, right? And we're pretty excited about this. So to protect people, about 5-6 years ago, we're known as an email security company, right? We protected people in email, and that's 85% of the threat vector today. And it continues to be sophisticated, continues to change. We're always going to do that. we had a fundamental sort of epiphany about 5 years ago, saying that, look, the bad actors don't really go after vulnerabilities and all of this sophisticated piece as much anymore. They're going after people, right? I mean, you can talk about quantum computing, you can talk about ChatGPT, you can talk about all of this stuff, right? But in the end of the day, if you can get somebody to click and give out your credentials, then away you go, right? It's that simple. Now, there's sophisticated ways of getting there. So we fundamentally took a step back and said, if we can protect people, and the other key thing is the architecture was changing, right? It used to be everything in the wall. So what was common, right? When people went home, people went to the using things in the cloud as an example, multiple devices. What's common with all of that? It's the person, right? It's not. It's not the network anymore, like we used to do it back in the day. There's no choke point anymore. The person, it's the person. So we fundamentally took a step back and said, if we can go protect the people, tell you everything you need to know to protect that person as part of that, that will make you much safer as a defender. And so we took a step back and said, well, where are people being attacked? They're being attacked from email, being attacked in the cloud. They have some behavioral things that we need to solve. So all of that was the protect people piece, and that encompasses a bunch of our different solutions, from cloud to email to security awareness, all of that. The second area that we really started working on was the bad actors started to move from things like business email compromise to actually exfiltrating data. And so we looked at that whole defend data space. And when we looked at that space, we looked at most of it was being served by DLP. And we fundamentally felt that DLP was more of a compliance tool than a risk-based tool. And that's when we went after your company, right? Observe it. And so we had the channels, we're the email channel, we're the cloud channel. We didn't have an endpoint, and what your company at the time, Observe It, was doing, we thought was very unique. We knew Insider Threat and DLP were going to merge, and Observe It was in the Insider Threat. And then the second thing that they were doing fundamentally was building a great native ground up cloud architecture that could not just ingest data, but give you different views, because as you do investigations, you need to have different views from different functions. So they were doing that, and that really helped round out our story into one platform, one backend, one endpoint, all of that sort of stuff. And now that we have defend data, we now understand who's coming into the front door, attacking you, and then what's happening in the back door, right? And so that's our fundamental thing. And then back to the people thing, the way we really reimagine that defending data thing is that the realm of data loss had always been around rules and content. And we took a step back and said, data doesn't grow legs and move itself. People move data. And so if we can create a set of personas around that and defend those personas, that then makes you much safer as a company. And so that's the journey there.
I want to break that down a little bit, Ashan, because I think there's magic in your words. And for a guy who's been in cyber for 20 plus years, I've seen a lot of it. But this protect people, defend data is very attractive to me. Talk about protect people and what you might be doing beyond email. And I found this really interesting as we watch the behaviors now with the remote workforces and the changing, I call it the big shift from our standard corporate network to this incredible environment we now have with a hybrid of people working from different things. A lot of communications now are beyond email too, WhatsApps and WeChats and even Zooms and LinkedIn DMs and things. What's Proofpoint doing to protect people beyond email?
Yeah, no, good question. So I think the first thing that's important, right? If you go back to first principles, right? I mean, if you just go back to first principles, all of this, when through email, because still 85% of the threats come in through there, you can gather a lot of information. You can gather a lot of information about who's being attacked in your organization. You can gather information about who's attacking, to some degree, even why they're attacking, right? And so those same threat actors tend to move to the other places as well. So what are the next two vectors? And so we have connectors into all. You can use the same backend mechanisms to do a lot of this detection. But the next big thing we looked at was actually in the more on the Teams and Slack. And if you start to see more of the social channels, what we've seen in that space isn't a huge percentage of increase. Still a lot of the attacks aren't coming through there. However, as that gets more federated and more open, which you're going to start to see with more companies partnering, you're partnering now with your supply chain. As that stuff becomes more federated, and of course Slack has moved to a much more open model, you're going to start to see more of the threats move that way, right? And so we're well in it, right? We monitor it, we have connectors there, and we have all the back end, and we do all the AI and all of that to detect some of the threats there. The other thing, though, that CISOs tell me, believe it or not, is it isn't so much the Teams. It's the phone. It's the smishing stuff, right? And so we're in that space as well. So because we have this great detection engine and explainability engine that we built based on email, we're able to move into all those channels. So Teams, SMS is another area, Slack, and all of those type of social media pieces. We moved into that space.
I love the strategy there. I really believe that. When I was CEO of FireEye, we were starting to watch what we called, cross-vector attacks, right? And that was at that time mostly web and email, but boy, do we see the opportunities the attackers have, and I think you see them too, to use multiple channels, maybe start with email, move over to text, move from text to WhatsApp, and really cross-correlate kind of attack vectors. So we have to defend the same way. And I love how Proofpoint's being positioned there. That's very, very interesting. Wow. Talk about now defend data for a minute, because you are fast becoming, if not already have become, the largest data security company. And a lot of people don't realize just how well Proofpoint's doing that. So whatever you could talk about what you're doing there and how you're expanding that area too. I'm real curious to talk about, as we've seen from Russia and Ukraine, data wiping, data poisoning. Now with generative AI, what we're starting to see is the art of the possible in data management and security and governance. It's one of the biggest areas we watch for at NightDragon. Talk a little bit more there, would you?
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating and morphing space, right? And I think this will change pretty significantly. I think first, if you talk about it just from the threat side, right? You can see, if you look at any of the trends of ransomware used to be completely about making your systems inoperable. In the last year and a half, that's actually changed to more extortionware, right? I mean, you take data out, and then you take companies' data out, and then you charge them back for their company, or you release it in dribs and drabs, and you've seen that in all of the recent attacks in the last really 12 months, right? So how do you sort of protect data? I think there's a couple of things that we looked at, and to your point, we're the largest insider threat player in the market, and we're the second largest DLP player in the market. I think this year we'll surpass the number one player, and we'll sort of be number one. Now, truth be told, Dave, we were helped a little bit by the industry. By certainly the industry moves, right? The Broadcoms and the McAfees and right. So on. So we were helped, but we a lot
of people were too, right? Yeah, so a lot of take advantage of it.
But so the fundamental belief for us is that, again, back to the people-centric view, is we created 3 personas, Dave, right? And the personas were the following. One is you and me, the harried workers, all the folks who are probably listening, right? The people who do the day-to-day make mistakes. You make mistakes. You send data to places that you shouldn't send it to. It could be OneDrive, it could be an email, it could be USB drive, accidentally you could print something, whatever it is. So that's sort of one persona. The second persona is that you have someone who's been compromised, right? And so one of the big attacks, your audience has probably heard of the concept of account takeover. This really started back in 2017 when people moved to Office 365. It's come back in a big way, because what's happened is it went away for a little while, in the sense that a lot of, like, Office and Google, they required you to do multi-factor authentication. They moved away from basic authentication, but that's come back because there are about 2,000 of these multi-factor authentication bypass kits that we're tracking now. and it's working, right? I mean, it is, you know, EvilGenix and all of those actors out there, they're using proxy, and so they don't even have to masquerade your site. It's working, so you see the MFA bypass bit. So that's the second bit, is how, when you get a compromised user, I attack the account, assume that persona. That's the second persona. The third persona, and unfortunately, it's risen in the last 3 years because of COVID, and now I think, frankly, because of some of the layoffs, that you get the disgruntled and malicious insider, right? And some of that is being driven by state actors, right? I mean, we've seen in the news where state actors pay an insider to help them get access, or somebody's just disgruntled, they're leaving a company, they've been laid off. So that insider threat has sort of grown. So we defined those three personas, and then it was a question of how do you protect those personas? And what we heard from a lot of our customers is, hey, this alert fatigue thing is brutal for us. You know, when we go into DLP, you get these false positives. I can't deal with it. By the way, there's a cybersecurity staffing shortage as well. I just can't deal with any of this. So we really started to try and get signal from noise. And the way you do that is you understand what data they're interacting with, what they have access to, what privilege they have in their environment, what sort of behaviors are happening as a result of it. Because if, for instance, Dave, it's one thing if you open a file, it's another thing is if you open a file, it's confidential, you encrypt it, you move it to your personal drive, you clear your cache, something's going on with Dave, right? It may not be bad, but we ought to be able to get you to the next level of analysis. And so you take that, right, and then you merge it with, is this user being compromised? Are they being attacked from the outside? And we have that front door information. Then you get a very, very strong signal. And this is public, so I can say this, but we were part of the technology that helped stop the exfiltration of the COVID vaccine at Pfizer and a diabetes drug. And this is public, so we can say that. And there are many other instances like that, because we took a new view of the whole data protection piece. And then, you know, you talk about some of the AI and, you know, such a buzzword, right? And we can talk about that. One of the ways you can do AI, you know, we bought a company out of Singapore, believe it or not, full of data scientists called Dathina. One of the things I think people get into make a mistake. This is sort of my opinion on this, is how they try to start all these data protection journeys is they try to classify all their data. It's just really hard, right, to do that across a company, especially when you're acquiring, you have different types of businesses. But what this organization does is all AI based. We're able to look at 100% of the context, but only about 5% of the content, and classify about 80 to 85% of that data. And then because it's learning, you can over time get to about 90-95% classification with very little overhead. And so all of that we put together for our data protection strategy, and we've seen a lot of success with some very large companies.
I feel like it's a brilliant move that you've been making here with your Nexus AI, as well as some of the other moves. By the way, you know, I'm a little biased because of Elusive, but I thought the identity detection response area that you were alluding to as well for lateral movement and management was key. I want to ask you kind of a macro question in time we have as well, because last night, Palo Alto announced some earnings, and I know you don't directly compete necessarily with Palo Alto, but it's fascinating to see what Nikesh, and I had Nikesh on here sometime back, but the big are getting bigger, right? We're watching this window, and I used to always teach as CEO, you know your window, right? And we're watching this sort of opportunity for the best of suite maybe versus best of breed to pivot. CrowdStrike seeing this energy, Zscaler seeing this energy, Palo Alto seeing this energy. And I just wanted to cite one area that I was just really impressed with Palo Alto's results, and that was the big deals. They announced the 1 million plus, the 5 million plus, and the 10 million plus categories of number of deals and size of those deals, all of them growing 59% to 144% year over year. So clearly Palo Alto is able to create economic leverage right now of their suite of products. Here you are, and try to get in your head for a minute as you go into this fiscal year. you have the same opportunity. Now look at the suite you have across all of this. How are you thinking about this real market share grab opportunity that's there? I'm sure you're already feeling it, but what are you doing to really drive that?
Yeah, no, it's been frankly what we've been doing for the last half a decade, I would say, right? If not a decade on this one, Dave. The big thing in this, just back again a little bit on the first principles piece, and you and I were in the collaboration industry together, right? And in fact, you still have you have your fingers in a lot of things, but you still have your fingers in that.
We can talk collaboration later. We'll do another one on that one.
Oh, yeah, let's not do that right now. So, but what I will say is this: in those spaces, right? Collaboration, networking, you name it, right? There is an opportunity to consolidate to one or two vendors. Just philosophically, that's the way it works. Moore's law. There's only certain ways. There's only finite ways you can collaborate. There's a finite amount of things you can do, and you can make it better, faster, easier. I mean, Zoom's done a great job as an example doing that. But there's a finite amount of ways. The big learning for me in security, and I've been in cyber for a while, and then I came back to it, is there's no Moore's law, right? The big X factor is the bad actor. So you can have the most elegant architecture, right, and the best properties, but the minute somebody breaks through, all of that's for naught. And so the balance is going to be between how do you drive best of breed and integrate that to defend you better, and then be able to integrate with other best of suite. I think that's sort of where this thing's going. And I think Palo's doing it. I think the number of vendors are doing it. We're doing it as well, right? And so one of the key areas we thought about from protecting people is how do we completely protect people, not just in email, but from cloud threats, right? And the other channels, other communication channels. How do we completely do that and own that in a way that is best of breed, right? But doesn't make a customer go and buy 17 different vendors to go do that. The average in the Fortune 100, I think that the number is they have about anywhere from about 80 to 120 vendors, security vendors in the network. It's too much, right? So I think there's going to be a consolidation into that best of suite. So that's sort of how we're playing it on the protect people, and same with the defend data thing, right? And I think those are the two different areas we're playing. And so
hearing? Oh, sorry, go ahead. You finish.
I was just going to say we benefited from that, right? I mean, it took us 18 years to get to $1 billion. In the last 3 years, we've added another half a proof point, basically, right?
Yeah, amazing. And I think your future is incredible there. What are you hearing from CISOs and budgets and things? My perspective on this is, we certainly have verticals who are a little more impacted by the economy right now, but we have other verticals who are thriving in this climate. I'm on the board of Delta Airlines, and we're having some of the best of our history in terms of the transportation industry. And so there's sectors that are good, and there's countries that are good, and things that are going on. I'm curious from your perspective, you've talked to hundreds of customers now in your time, and what are you hearing about budgets? What are you hearing about consolidation of vendors? You mentioned that a little bit. What's your view there?
Yeah, so there's a few things. There's no question everyone's feeling the headwinds, right? And in some cases it's tailwinds for some folks, but there are some headwinds. Whatever it is, inflation, supply chain, all of that's getting better as we've seen, right? And so interest rates, so all of that are part of the mix. What I'll say in general, there's a couple of themes when I talk to a lot of CISOs. One is they want to make sure that they are able to get as much as they can with the assets they have, right? So that's really, really important. And especially in a SaaS world where your SaaS company continues to add value, you have to make sure, and it's up to the SaaS company also to make sure that you're constantly realizing that value. You've just got it. And so whatever that is, whether that's quarterly meetings, whether that's automated rollouts of capabilities that CISOs can benefit from, I think that's a key piece. The second thing I do see is that in many of the CISOs, what they'll say is, look, what people are asking me is, I've made a lot of investments over the last few years. They're saying, can I take advantage of the investments, and then can I consolidate? Because there's fundamentally still a cybersecurity talent gap. And can I consolidate that into, I can't get to 1 or 2, but I can get to 4 or 5 or 6 partners that I can work with. And I expect you as partners to be able to play well with each other, right? And so to make my job easier. So I hear a lot about flight to quality, and they want to consolidate with some of the best of breed and best of suites, which I think we certainly are in that space. And then the third area that I hear is, how do I constantly, and this is also, and it's a bit different in the US versus Europe versus Asia, and I hate to use Europe, right, because it's actually multiple countries, and Asia, I don't like to do that, but still, if the general trend is, how do you continue to show the organization that security is an investment and not a cost, right? And that, I think, becomes more important in the next 12 months than ever before.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did a state of cybersecurity 3-hour event where I tried to do 6 different views on the cybersecurity industry, from government to, sort of investors in early stage, to technology companies, to system integrators, to VARs and disties, et cetera. And it was really interesting. The budgets largely were going up. More than 2/3 of the CISOs had talked about budgets going up. Almost every one of them talked about their budgets not going down, for sure, meaning like they were locked in at a minimum and there wasn't going to be any reduction because of the risk. And really what was interesting is we now have another major tailwind in cyber beyond this incredible threat environment that we're in. The threat environment for me has always driven spending for customers, but now we have this regulatory tailwind as well. I hate to call it a tailwind, but we see this incredible inertia of regulatory compliance across almost every industry in America, and that's spreading around the world, creating opportunity. Do you see the same thing as kind of threats and regulation? And by the way, I think Proofpoint could benefit tremendously from that because of all the archiving compliance there too.
Yeah, no question. I mean, regulation, there's a couple of things that are driving it. Actually, regulation and litigation, unfortunately. That's the other area that you have that's driving that. And so that's certainly helping a compliance space. It also means that you have to really start to think about things like data residency, data sovereignty, or, where you do things, how you do things. And that's important. That's part of the reason I think when you set up Observe It, or at least you're part of Observe It, they've already thought that way. And that's DNA sort of seep through the company, which is, look, I mean, when you do business in Germany and you do business with the works councils, there's a certain way you need to show up. There's a certain way your product needs to show up. There's a certain way your services need to show up as well. But no question, I think it's interesting, they call it sort of the globalization, but the world is becoming more sovereign, right? It is become, I mean, there's no bones about it. You look at any of the news, wherever you travel, you see the world's becoming more sovereign. And as the world becomes more sovereign, that opens up opportunities for security, but also regulatory capabilities. And I think companies who can map fast to that are going to be successful in the cyber world, because if you're using a lot of AI, you're using a lot of data, and you want to make sure that that data is safe, right?
I really think I always say it's the golden age of cyber, and I've watched this market go from a couple billion to hundreds of billions, and I don't see any, change in that trajectory over the next few years for all the reasons you just said. This globalization now almost, sort of balkanization is really creating a lot of trends. Talk a little bit in the last minutes that we have here about the future of Proofpoint. I'd like you to, I always had this adage, and I told you this, but if you can see it, you can be it. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. I love it. I always did a lot of kickoffs like that. What do you see Proofpoint being in the next couple of years? What's your vision for the company?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, again, the way we have been successful and grown is that we have been able to solve what matters most, right? And so the reason we're able to solve what matters most is, of course, we work a lot with our customers and all of that, but we really understand the landscape, right? I mean, we have a lot of threat, and you have a background in this too, Dave, right? It's so important to understand what's actually happening from the bad actors, right? And you marry that with some of the technology advances. That's how you create value, right, for a customer. So what we've always done well is not just protect people, but we've been able to tell people what's going on, because security can get into a whole bunch of gobbledygook, and so if you can rise above that and talk about not CVEs, but what's happening to people, what's happening to the company, where is it going, why does this matter to the business, and we've always done that. And so the fundamental thinking right now for us is we have great technology, great capability on the front door, right? And if you look at almost all of the attacks in the last in the last year or year and a half, what's happening is it's very consistent. You get some sort of, you infiltrate, you get some sort of you get some sort of credential, then you move laterally, and then you go exfiltrate data, or you do some sort of mischief. So how do you stop that? So you've got to stop some of that stuff in the front door. Prevention is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of pain, right? And so I think we do that a lot. We've done that through email. We've done that through cloud. We're doing that through a lot of things. We then got into the data protection space, which we think is another $1 billion plus market for us. And so that's a huge area for us. And we just talked about that. What we never had was that move around identity risk, right? We didn't have that. And that's why we acquired actually another one of your companies, Elusive. We're very excited about that, because now through the entire attack chain, you can sort of see what's happening in the attack chain, coming from the front door, people moving laterally, and then people exfiltrating data. So what we're doing in the next 2 years, and our customers will see that, is to stitch all of that together in a way that makes it easier for you to operate, but also for you to go and tell stories to the organization, your board, et cetera, about what's actually happening to the entire attack chain of an organization. I think we're uniquely positioned to do that, Dave, right? I don't think there's anyone who has that ability from just a data standpoint, a practice standpoint, and I think adding Elusive, which was a really great team. It's just a great team that we acquired that can help stitch that together. And the whole theory there, for people who don't know, is that in the post-compromise world, if someone compromises something, can you sandbox and can you ring fence them just to that place and not let them move out laterally? That is hugely important, because go look at any of the breaches in the last 18 months. It's all been about you getting there and then moving out and expanding your ring. If you can keep them there, then I think you just make it really hard for the attackers. And so that's where Proofpoint is going, is we're stitching together that entire attack chain in a very meaningful way, and then giving you information that you can talk to the rest of the organization about what's actually going on in the organization from an attack world. So we're very excited.
I only have 41 more companies in my NightDragon portfolio, so you can buy them all if you want, Ashan. I'm good with that. Listen, I always saw, here's a window of opportunity. I think Proofpoint can really be a system of record, almost a permanent system of record around protecting people, defending data. That infrastructure is going to be vital to almost every customer in the world. This is a window of opportunity. I've always said the road to 100 billion in market valuation, someone's going to get there. We've seen companies reach 50, 70 billion now in market value. Someone's going to hit 100 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. I really think Proofpoint is a major player and opportunity. I'm really excited to have you, Ashan. I think you're one of the most exciting new CEOs in this world. I love what your background is, your hard work, your humility, your honesty, all the H's that I love to pronounce. I'm so proud to have you on here. And I wish you the best of luck, my friend, and hope to stay close to you.
Yeah, Dave, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you, your audience. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Always enjoy time with you, Dave. Appreciate it.
See you around at RSA and all the events. And I wish you all the best, my friend. You take care of yourself.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. See you all. Take care.